So I'm Hannah Cates and I'm delighted to be here with Craig Tunnell. And Craig is one of the facilitators at the Hoffman Process. And the whole idea behind some of these videos is it's called Team Talks. So we want to introduce you a little bit more to the team and the facilitators so that you get to know them and also talk about interesting topics. This month we're talking about communication. And before we go into that, I would love to just begin by asking you a little bit more, introduce yourself, some of your background, what brought you to working with the Hoffman process, so we can get to know a little bit more
Yeah,
about
thanks, Hannah. Yeah, look, I came to the process many years ago, having done a bit of work on myself, but still feeling there was some parts of me that really weren't being got to. And the process for me was just really, I see it as a turning point in my life. It was a place where it just got to a depth of really understanding my behaviors and how to be free of them. And ultimately, I always say to people, they ask me, what did I get from Hoffman? And I say self-acceptance. And it sounds like a little couple of words, but it was really like a foundation for going forward in a different way through my life, where in the past, I'd always felt the foundations were a little shaky and I was doing stuff on top, trying to make things look better or feel better. But somewhere deep down, I didn't feel at home in myself. And I really see Hoffman as bringing me back home to me. And I still have and had a lot to build on, but it's been an amazing journey since then. About 2 years after I did Hoffman, I was asked to join the training program. I also trained as a therapist and do a lot of coaching in Sydney. And so for 28 years now, I've taught Hoffman. I must have been very young when I started, but and also run relationship workshops called Love Code workshops, which do deal a lot with communication as well as Hoffman. So yeah, so that's a little about me.
yeah, that's beautiful. And
Yeah,
actually, you were a facilitator when I went through the process myself, and I was saying
that's true.
memories for me. And the reason really that we're talking about communication is because at this time of year particularly, and I think a lot of people will resonate with this, it's not an obligation, but everyone often spends time with family. And when we go back into the family environment, it can present these moments of conflict because often there are triggers and there are patterns of behavior that, especially with our parents, that can cause conflict if we don't have awareness around them. And we haven't done something like the process, which enables us to understand things on a deeper level. And communication is something that can be so key within this time. And I don't know whether you could sort of share a little bit more on how more effective communication can be useful at this time.
Yeah. Do you want me to focus more on your family, of going back to your family, or just people in general? What would be more relevant?
Family and,
Yeah.
people in general. I think family is probably the biggest thing for a lot of people.
That's a pertinent one right now, isn't it? Yeah, look, I think we all have a lot of history with our family, and often when we go back into our family system, we have entrenched roles, and people in the family system also often expect us to sort of be in those roles. And yet sometimes those roles of behavior, or there's certain interpersonal patterns in the family that, once you've done something like the Hoffman process, or even if you haven't done the Hoffman process, you can feel like things don't work for you. I was talking with a client the other day, and he talked about, he was having something on at his place, and his mother found out, and mother then sort of made him feel very guilty that she hadn't been invited. And that's a really good example of, these are the sort of patterns that can live in a family. And so in some situation like that, you may at times need to have a bit of gentle conflict. Like, conflict is inevitable, but most of us do it really badly. For me, I was very afraid of conflict, and so I either underdid it and didn't say anything, But when we don't speak up about things, we move out of we start to move out of authentic connection, particularly with our families. So you often get people at the family dinner where they're like checking their watches and yawning, and how long do we? It's often because we haven't spoken about things that are important that might be able to improve or heal, and create a more flowing and caring and loving relationship with those members.
Yeah, you make a great point, because it's not the avoidance of the conflict. It's being able to meet the conflict in a different way.
Yes. And in healthy conflict, or conflict's maybe even too strong a word, but we do need to bring up these points. Otherwise, what happens is we start to wall off. If we don't speak about those things, it starts to create a barrier between you and the other. And that's something I really observe in families, and I did observe it in my own pre-Hoffman, is that I remember going to visit my mother with my girlfriend, and after about an hour, she came up to me and said, "You've totally changed. You're a different person," and she wasn't meaning in a good way. And I was reverting back to these old patterns, because at that point I wasn't really able to speak up about some things. And so, healthy communication and conflict areas, you need to be gentle in the way you bring it up and express your reality moderately. If we come at someone too hard or with a lot of reactivity, it tends to just trigger the defenses in the other person. And that's often when we get the impasse, the breakdown. So, yeah, so I think the first part is to have that more gentle approach, and really to share from, look, this is what happens for me over here. And that's a great thing Hoffman gives you, is much more awareness of your own feelings, what we call emotional literacy, the ability to identify what you're feeling and to speak it. And if you can keep it in that sort of I-centered way, it's often a lot easier for the other person to receive.
Mm.
Yeah. Mm.
So if you were to kind of summarize just off the top of your head, because what you're saying is a lot of people can't identify when something is coming up with them. So,
Yes.
for example, if there was a miscommunication arising, how that could show up in their lives. So I think I identified a couple from what you were talking about. It was withdrawal can be one of them.
Yes.
Another one can be reactivity.
Yes.
How else can things like miscommunication show up?
Yeah, and when I teach my relationship workshops, and people go, one of the misconceptions is we have to get to an open space straight away, and that's really hard. It's impossible. But what I'll often say in that is just start to share even the protection behavior you went into. So you might say, "Hey, I noticed when you said that, Mum, that I really withdrew, and I'd rather not withdraw. So that's why I want to speak that up." And then you can, and that's your first bit of real intimate connecting. And then the second bit, you might go, "And I suppose I felt a little upset when you said, I hadn't done anything," or something like that, and then you get more to the feeling underneath. You can see the way I'm talking about it. You just keep talking about what's happening over here, and it's more inviting for the other to even use the differences or the conflict as a way of connecting, as a way of having intimacy.
Yeah, that is such a powerful thing for anyone who watches this, is coming from a place of I, because so often it's like, you made me feel like this. And
Yes.
That's like attacking the other person for them being who they are, who
Yes.
see the world in a different way to what we do, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So by coming from a place of I, it's self-responsibility, and it's also saying, I've gone through life and I've seen the world in the way that I have, which has created these things within me, which has made me sort of see this in this way. And it opens
Yes.
the space for like what we're talking about, communication, rather than
Yes.
attack.
Yeah, because when you use the you focus, there's usually embedded blame in there, and where we kind of saying you are responsible for how I'm feeling, I blame you, and there's sort of a making wrong, and that generally, unless maybe you're the Dalai Lama or someone, that will tend to like trigger the defensiveness in the other, because it touches our wounds of feeling, our shame wound, where we feel like they're saying I'm wrong, they're saying I'm bad, they're saying I'm unlovable or something like that. So it's good to be direct but sensitive and very respectful. That's the other thing, is respecting the other's reality. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so beautiful and really powerful. Like, I really
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing that. I think people will connect to it. And to kind of
The
finish
other,
off,
the
go on.
other the other thing I would say is also it's nice when let's say that dialogue starts becoming two-way. It's really important to be able to express acceptance of the other's reality. It doesn't necessarily mean you agree with it or like it, but because often we don't agree with it or like it, and then we immediately getting our rebuttal ready. Whereas when you can express acceptance, it's sort of like, well, I actually can hear that you feel this way around that. And when the other feels your acceptance of their reality, it doesn't mean it's the reality. It's really comforting and soothing for that person, because most of us often haven't really felt heard in our lives as well, or understood. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, you're basically saying to that person, I see you and I hear you, and I'm not dismissing what's
Yeah,
coming up for you.
exactly. And it kind of changes the culture of your conversation. It improves. We talk about organizational culture, but you can create relationship culture as well. So yeah.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
beautiful.
Mm.
And I feel like something that would be great to kind of finish on would be, so for anyone who's kind of interested or intrigued and feels like they would love to improve their communication,
Mm.
how do you feel like, just a few points that we have really talked about, but
Mm.
summarizing how the Hoffman can do that? So for example, it might be to see people's shame.
Yeah, I think that one of the great things Hoffman does is it gives you a lot of compassion,
Mm,
and compassion is really understanding that we all have our patterns, but it helps you to understand what might be driving that person's pattern, and which is usually some old wound or unhealed place. And if we can broaden our hearts a bit to that person, then we're able to be more adult and less reactive, and it creates a sort of a spaciousness to connect, because you've that sort of background of compassion. So yeah, that would be one of the big things. I can give you another one if you want, or are we
well, no, I mean,
how are we doing?
I think that's great.
Yeah.
And what I picked up from that was like, it gives you the ability to have acceptance,
Yeah.
vulnerability,
Yes.
compassion, and I think awareness is, they're like huge things that come from that.
Yes. Yeah. I suppose the other one, just briefly, is we become aware of our own, our own structure of patterns, and I think what Hoffman helps us become more aware of is our own subjectivity, that the way we see the world isn't necessarily true. It's our personal reality, but it's not necessarily the reality. And so once we have that, and we kind of know the filters we make, some people might see the world through being abandoned. I used to feel any relationship I was in, I was going to be controlled, because my mum was quite controlling. And so, but then after, 5 girlfriends, I started to go, maybe there's something to do with me here, So once we know our own kind of biases and preferences and lenses we view, we are a lot more effective in our relating. And yeah. more
Absolutely.
open and true. Yeah.
I agree with that.
Mm.
And it's almost like when you've done it, it's like you notice your lenses, and it's almost like you can see that someone else has got lenses on too. And so
Yes, exactly.
you're all just sat around the table, you know, imagine at Christmas and everyone's got their own peculiar lenses on
Yeah.
that are there, you know, like if you kind of bring that into your imagination, should you wish to, we've all got
Yes.
peculiar lenses and spectacles on around the table, all seeing it through a different lens, you know, and
Yeah.
it's all it's all creating our reality in every given moment. And I think what
Yes.
you said is really, really valuable and important. And I feel it gives people a bit of an idea in it and some
Yeah.
information
Good.
for themselves. So that's
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Craig.
Great. Nice to chat with you, Hannah. Yeah.
So great to chat with you
Yeah.
too. And
And I hope everyone has a great time with their families if they're with them this Christmas.
yeah, me too. Sending so
Yeah.
much love to everybody.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.